How's it going, everyone? Landon with LMR.com. In this video, I'm going to be installing Watson Racing's 4-point bolt-in roll bar and their rear seat delete into our 2018 Mustang GT shop car. Now, if you're unfamiliar with who Watson Racing is, well, they're responsible for the 2016 Cobra Jet program. And in fact, they built some insanely nice pieces for the S550 Mustangs. Now, one of their more iconic creations is their 4-point bolt-in roll bar. This roll bar from Watson Racing is currently available in either a gray or red powder coated finish. It's constructed from 1 3/4 inch DOM or drawn over mandrel steel tubing and then TIG welded. Watson Racing even incorporates shoulder harness retention loops. This roll bar will benefit your S550 in several ways. It's going to increase chassis rigidity and provide added safety. It's even NHRA and NMRA legal. The Watson Racing engineers built this roll bar to be either a bolt-in or a weld-in application. And for you guys like myself that are a little over 6'3", you can also move the seat all the way back. Installing this roll bar will require permanent fit modification to your car, which includes drilling, cutting, and the removal of some seam seal. Now, attention to detail, a steady hand, and a lot of patience is going to be strongly recommended if you're doing this yourself. A high set of mechanical skills and knowledge of chassis strengthening is an added bonus. The rear seat delete and its components weigh in at approximately 38 pounds. Watson Racing's roll bar and their rear seat delete tip the scale at 71.5 pounds. So the total added weight is going to be in the neighborhood of roughly 34 pounds. Now, fitment-wise, this roll bar is going to fit the fastback model only. Of course, all needed installation hardware and instructions will be in the box. To get started, I went ahead and removed the 2 front seats for maximum work room. They're held in place with 4 T47 Torx bolts. You'll simply remove the 4 bolt covers with a small flathead screwdriver, remove the bolts, disconnect the electrical connection if it's equipped, and then you can yank the seat out of the car. The rear seat bottom is removed by simply pushing in at the center of each side to release the clips. Remove the 2 outer 15mm seat back retaining nuts. Lower the seat backs and remove the middle 15mm bolt. Now you can remove the seat backs from the car. Unscrew the 2 plastic retainers from the floor and position the small carpeted floor piece out of your way. Loosen and remove the T45 Torx bolts, securing both child restraint brackets to the floor. Loosen and remove the 2 13mm bolts, securing the seatbelt receptacles to the floor. To remove the rear interior quarter panel, start by pulling out on the section located near the package tray. Work your way across the top of the panel near the quarter window and driver's seat belt. Lift up on the lower door sill panel just enough to remove the lower section of the rear interior quarter panel. Bring the panel forward and then remove the rear seat belt trim piece. Now you can fully remove the interior quarter panel from the car. Gently pull the C-pillar trim panel away from the car. Remove the passenger side rear interior quarter panel and gently pull the C-pillar away from the car on that side as well. Remove both push pins securing the package tray. Pull the package tray towards you and then remove it from the car. To remove the seatbelt assemblies, loosen and remove the 3 13mm retaining bolts. Carefully rotate the assembly out of the body of the car. Finally, remove the 13mm bolt securing the seatbelt assembly to the floor and it's free to come out. Repeat these steps for the other seatbelt assembly. Remove the 4 T40 Torx bolts that secure the seat back strikers. From inside the trunk, remove the main carpeted piece. Unscrew the 4 plastic retainers from the rear trunk panel. Pull the panel away from the studs and then remove it from the car. Remove the 2 push pins from each side carpet and then remove those from the trunk. Heading back inside the car, near the floor brace and B-pillar, remove the 8mm bolt that secures the ground wire. Disconnect the impact sensor electrical connection and dislodge the harness clip. Continue dislodging as many of the harness clips as you can near the B-pillar and floor brace. Trim away any seam seal from the 3 bolts securing the floor brace to the B-pillar. Remove all 3 bolts with a 13mm socket. Once the bolts have been removed, clean up any remaining seam seal. Go ahead and repeat these steps for the other side. Now you can have a friend assist with positioning the main hoop into the car. Place the passenger side harness over the foot of the main hoop. Let the foot exit the car just enough to position the driver's side harness over the other foot on the main hoop. With the bar now in place, remove the plastic upper seatbelt bolt cover from each side. Loosely start the 6 provided M8 by 30mm flanged hex head bolts with a washer underneath the bolt head. There will be 3 per side, and they're going to secure the main hoop to the B-pillar. Install the diagonal bars into the main hoop and fully tighten the 4 provided M8 socket head bolts. Make a note of the floor plates and any seam seal that you're going to have to trim away. Remove the 4 bolts and then remove the diagonal bars. With the bars now removed, trim away the seam seal with a small gasket scraper. In my case, I also had to remove some noise dampening material. I started by heating the material first and using a sharp utility blade to cut a precise line. I then used a small gasket scraper to remove the material in bulk. Take this time to support the vehicle. Make a note of any and all lines near the support beam that is running horizontally from one side of the car to the other. Dislodge any line or harness clip that connects to the brace. All of these clips can easily be dislodged by hand. Back inside the car, make a note of the spot welds that run the entire length of the car from side to side. I went ahead and marked the spot welds for demonstration purposes. To locate the center line of the support beam, measure the distance of the spot welds and then divide by 2. Mark this line with a square. Also, mark the spot welds. I chose to measure the outside of the spot welds and utilize a square to ensure that they were nice and even. Do this for each side and then reinstall the diagonal bars. Fully tighten the hardware and then have an assistant move the hoop until the floor pads are centered. Make a note of the marks you just made in relation to the bolt holes in the floor pads on the diagonal bars. Once that is achieved, torque the 6 M8 main hoop retaining bolts to 30 to 35 pound-feet. Center punch each hole opening on the floor pads. Remove the diagonal bar retaining hardware and then remove the diagonal bars. Drill all 12 holes with an 1/8" drill bit to create a pilot hole. The center holes on each floor pad will be drilled to 1/4 inch. The 4 outer holes on each floor pad will be drilled to 1/2 inch. If you have access to a stepped drill bit, I would highly recommend this method to create a cleaner hole. If you don't have access to a stepped drill bit, progressively enlarge each hole to the desired size. Once each hole is drilled, vacuum up any shavings. With the roll cage now completely dialed in, position one of the rear interior quarter panels on a workbench. Watson Racing illustrates in the instructions where you need to modify to clear the main hoop. Measure 1.5 inches towards the front of the panel from the small opening. Use painter's tape to mark the distance. Measure 3.5 inches from the previous mark and use painter's tape to mark this measurement as well. Place a piece of tape horizontally across the panel and approximately 3/4 of an inch up from the bend in the panel. Indicate the middle of the horizontal tape line. Use a body saw or Dremel tool and cut the vertical lines. Stop just before the panel starts to bend up. Use a Dremel tool to cut a half moon in between the 2 vertical cuts. Once the small portion of panel is removed, use the Dremel tool and a small sanding disc to further refine the panel. Be sure and set the tool on low to medium speed and don't apply too much pressure. After all the rough areas have been refined, clean up any plastic shavings. Go ahead and repeat these steps for the other rear interior quarter panel. Now go ahead and position the upper panel of the Watson Racing rear seat delete on a workbench. Towards the lower section of the panel, locate the pre-cut holes in the reinforced panel. Trace the edge of the opening with your finger and then cut an incision with a sharp utility blade. Run the blade along the reinforced panel and then remove the material. Flip the upper panel over and then cut the remaining material. Do the same for the other opening. On the 2 lower rear seat panels, locate the small notch that is covered by fabric. Use the sharp utility blade and trim this flush with the reinforced panel. Do this for each panel. Reposition the package tray back into place. Measure up from the bottom 2 1/8 inch. Then measure 7/8 inches from the outside of the oval opening and mark the area. Do this for both sides and then remove the panel. Center punch each mark and then drill each hole with a 5/16 drill bit. Vacuum or use compressed air to clean up any debris. Reposition the package tray back into the car and reinstall each C-pillar trim panel. Now go ahead and reconnect any sensor, electrical connection, or harness clip that you moved to install the main hoop into the car. Roll the carpet over the main hoop and modify it in a way that allows the carpet to sit flush with the car. Feed the rear interior quarter panel through the trunk and then carefully position it back into place. Do the same for the other side. If there are fitment issues near the hoop, make a note of the clearance and then remove the panels. Use the Dremel tool to remove more material from the modified area. Whenever the quarter panels are in place, reinstall the 2 lower door sill trim panels. Use the provided bolts and washers to secure the provided lower panel pedestals to the floor. These will go where the rear seat belt assemblies were attached to the floor. No worries on getting these mixed up either, they'll only install one way. Carefully tighten the bolts with a 17mm socket. Use 2 of the provided square carpet pieces to cover the exposed wiring harnesses near the bottom portion of the rear interior quarter panel. These simply slide into place. Position the middle support over the tunnel. The textured side will face up, and the single hole will be closest to the floor carpet. The 2 large provided push pins will secure this middle support piece. The push pin with the electrical tape will go in the frontmost hole, and the push pin with no tape will go in the rearmost hole. Use a pair of needle nose pliers to remove the factory installed star washers. Doing this will prevent water from potentially making its way inside of the car. All of this hardware retain these child restraint brackets, seatbelt receptacles, and seatbelt assemblies. Before installing the lower panels, reinstall all of the bolts back into their respective areas. On the back of each lower rear seat delete panel, make note of the small notch. Install each lower seat delete panel into the car. These will only go one way. Use the 4 provided glossy black push pins to secure the lower panels to the middle support piece. On the upper seat delete panel, the side with the raised portion will face towards the trunk. Install the upper panel in place and use the 2 smaller push pins to secure it and the package tray to the car. Use a sharp utility blade to cut the corner of the rear seat belt trim piece. Be sure and position the belt out of the way. Once the cut has been made, slide the belt out of the trim piece. Do this for the other side, and then reinstall each modified trim piece back into the car. Slide each diagonal bar through the upper panel and position them into the main hoop. Reinstall and torque the hardware to 18 pound-feet. Have a friend hold one of the provided nut plates in line with the holes in the support brace. Thread 2 of the M10 by 25mm flange head bolts into the nut plate. Repeat this for each nut plate. Now you can go ahead and torque each bolt in a star pattern to 25 pound-feet. Slide one of the provided washers over the M6 socket head bolt. Thread each of them into the nut plate and torque to 12 pound-feet. Do the same for the other side. Once the nut plates are fully tight, be sure and reinstall the brake line clips back into the support brace. Reinstall the trunk side carpets and push pin retainers. Reinstall the rear trunk panel and the 4 plastic retainers. Reposition the large square trunk carpet. Be sure you align it with the 2 side pieces. Measure the distance from the side of the diagonal bar to the trunk carpet. Write down this measurement. Measure the distance from the rear of the diagonal bar to the square carpet. Write down this measurement. Do this for the other side. The measurements should be very similar. Now measure the diameter of the bar. This should be 1 3/4 inches. Add a ½ inch to this number. Place the small trunk carpet on a workbench. Toward the rearward corner of the carpet, place 2 pieces of painter's tape on the carpet. These will be placed in a way that they reflect the 2 measurements that you recorded in the trunk. Where the tape intersects, measure toward the center of the carpet 7/8 of an inch and place a mark. Now use a circular object that has a diameter of 2 1/4 inch and center it on the mark you just made. Trace the object with a marker. Use a sharp utility blade and cut the outside of the mark. Remove the carpeted piece and then trim the sound deadening. From the center point of the hole, cut the carpet back and then out to create a small incision for the diagonal bar to pass through. Trim away any remaining sound deadening. Repeat the same exact steps for the other side. Now position the carpet into the car. Be sure and tuck it underneath the 2 lower rear seat delete panels. Slide the carpet around the diagonal bars and then reinstall the large carpeted piece. close the trunk, reinstall the front seats, take a deep breath, and you're all finished. All right guys, wrapping things up here. Installation time for myself with an assistant was approximately a full day. Now I chose to bolt this thing in instead of welding it. Because after all, that's why I wanted to put it in our 2018 Mustang GT. Other than that, Watson Racing really did an outstanding job on this particular roll bar. Now, of course, when going this route, be sure and pick up their matching rear seat delete. It already has the needed provisions for the diagonal bars. So if you're in the market for added safety, and quite honestly, some killer interior aesthetics for your 2015 to 2018 Fastback Mustang, then this Watson Racing roll bar is an absolute must-have. To see more how-to and review videos covering industry-leading products, be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video, and don't forget to turn on notifications. While you're at it, check out our other videos, and don't forget to shop lmr.com for all things 1979 to present Mustang and SVT Lightning.